So this is a great honour to do the closing presentation. My hope is that I can reflect some of the key learnings from this week. Now, this will be in no way exhaustive. I know that you will each have taken away different points of interest. So a main aim of our conference is to give a platform to the growing body of work in dog and cat population management so that we all get the opportunity to hear from our colleagues around the world. And for that, I must first extend a very deep, heartfelt thank you to all the speakers who I know will have slaved over their presentations. So this effort is immortalised on our conference webpage, where you can find the videos of all the presentations. So please share this webpage so that others can catch up on the news and keep using those hashtags so we can keep the conversations going. So on to learnings from the week. So we heard Abby describe dog population management as a wicked problem. And part of that comes from the complexity of dog population dynamics. We've seen this diagram pop up a few times this week with those many subpopulations of dogs and the processes taking dogs into and out of the free roaming population. And those same processes are at play for cats. And as Matt has just showed us, you can actually expand this further where you have the dog and cat meat trade in action. But the complexity, the wickedness, comes from the fact that behind each of these processes is a set of human behaviours. And as Ruth described yesterday, we are predictably irrational. And to change those behaviours, we may need to overcome many barriers, and that is often through the provision of accessible services, in particular veterinary services. And on Thursday, we heard how this can be done, but we also heard the many challenges to that. The take-home message is not to give up, to consider this too difficult, but to embrace the fact that we need to use a multiple stakeholder approach to make an impact. So no single organisation is going to be able to do all this in isolation. The role of multiple stakeholders, including the leading role of government, came out strongly on Wednesday. So remember, population management is not a short-term project. This is a permanent community need, so it must be sustained, and that does require government leadership and enabling, including through funding. But they also don't work alone. So we heard from Anita and Manuela about the partnership between an international NGO and a local government who is also working with local NGOs. And we heard a little bit more about that from Anna today. From Cilia, we heard about their academy, which reaches the different parts of government, municipalities, the police and the judiciary. And from Lyot, we heard how central government is supporting municipal veterinary services, including with some reward-based payments when they achieve the success of a rehomed animal being re-registered by their new owners 1 year after adoption. Now, I don't present this stakeholder lightly. I recognise the amount of work that has gone into developing these relationships and growing these partnerships to where they are today. So on Tuesday, we heard from Zain about the significant legislative step that has been taken in Jordan, but without the necessary capacity building to allow sufficient implementation or buy-in from all municipalities. On Wednesday, Agnes described a similar national legislative step towards TNR for cats in Spain, and the example from one particular municipality who has gone ahead and implemented with good success. But we also heard how this law now hangs in the balance, waiting for what may be a new government who may respond differently to lobbying pressure. I also really enjoyed hearing the government perspective from Liran. There are many governments wanting to do the right thing for the citizens that they serve, but the right thing is not always obvious, and they're commonly faced with a predicament of how to find a common ground between conflicting views. For those governments that are not as engaged as Liran's in this subject, we heard from Pankaj about what we can do to increase the political interest in population management, bringing in new stakeholders by considering the contribution that humane and effective population management could make to many of the Sustainable Development Goals. Particularly on Thursday, but also throughout the week, we heard about the concept of community engagement and actual action. So we heard about the engagement of a specific community, that of a residents' welfare association, from Anna at Stray Buddy in India. And from Vrushti and Piyush, we heard how HSI integrates community into their ABC programs in India, recognizing that conventional ABC, working somewhat isolated from communities, was not embracing the complexity of dog population dynamics, the conflicts between dogs and people, or the sustainability challenge. And from Alana yesterday, we heard how in Canada, they're using an online workshop to engage different stakeholders within a community so they can work together on population management. Again, community engagement is not a simple process. Not every community wants to engage in the way you would like them to. And I recognise the amount of patient work that has gone into all the community engagement we heard about this week. I also recognise that this work is repaid many times over. When each of those community members or stakeholders replicates your messages, your desired actions, and in effect multiplies and amplifies what you could have achieved if you'd acted alone. We have also heard a lot about owners and responsible animal ownership, and about helping people to be the responsible owners they would like to be through increasing access to care. So we heard from Audrey in South Africa. We heard from Tessa and just now from Michelle in Canada. We heard from Jessica and Bonnie in Australia. And if that last slide looks novel to you, that's because we didn't have space for Bonnie's presentation in the live sessions, but it's a great one. So we've included it on the conference webpage. Please take a look to learn about the Ehrlichia canis outbreak in Australia that started in 2020. Again, this is not as simple as it might sound, and Alex talked us through the dimensions of access to care on Thursday. But I did want to reflect on the fact that nearly all presenters were talking about delivering subsidised care. In the past, providing vet care to owned animals for free has not been uncommon, and this brings with it the risk of toxic charity, unintentionally causing an undervaluing of the very service that we recognise is crucially important for the long run. Now, I'm not sure that animal owners are necessarily so blind to the real cost, so perhaps the risks can be overplayed, but owners in general should contribute. These are their animals from which they benefit, and it's your sustainability. So ask for money unashamedly. The final point I wanted to make about the importance of multiple stakeholders in population management is you. So every time we run this conference, the global reach goes further. The number of stakeholder groups increases and the balance improves. This is no longer a niche NGO subject. I also wanted to reflect on this point, which was brought up by many of our presenters in different ways, and it's a core principle of ICAM. Understand where the dogs and cats are coming from and address those sources. So this week we heard a lot about CNVR or TNVR of dogs and cats, and it has a very important role to play in the right context, but it actually only addresses these processes in population dynamics. And so we also heard about comprehensive approaches. And by that, we mean a population management system that recognises and acts on all the sources that are at play. In the Q&A, Dr. Ob and Dr. Alla described their interest in expanding their work with owners in Bangkok, Thailand. I also wanted to mention that 25% of the dogs reached by their CNVR project were actually owned dogs that were allowed to roam. So they are already working on addressing that additional source of unwanted puppies from owned animals. Zain used the term holistic stray animal control. Liren described TNR as an important component for cats in Israel, but that this has to be accompanied by other practices. Celia talked about root causes and prevention rather than treating the symptoms. And Vrushti and Piyush described how conventional ABC alone cannot be expected to solve all conflicts. There needs to be a comprehensive or integrated approach. Otherwise, ABC or CNVR will be perceived to have failed and thrown out. My last learning point is about data in dog and cat population management. People who know me well will know that this is a subject I care a lot about. Not the collection of data for data's sake, to make us look scientific and objective with our graphs and our p-values, but data that is used to your advantage to make the best possible evidence-based decisions. So from John, Tyler, and Conrad, we heard how you can use survey data with spatial information and detailed maps to understand the distribution of your population and its size. And then you can plan with wisdom on your side. How will I access these dogs for vaccination? Or where do I focus my cat trapping efforts? From Andy, we heard about a freely available computer model where you can take that baseline data and test what interventions you might want to use and to what intensity and for how long and what might that result in. We also heard people using data they had collected through monitoring. So Helen described the first randomized controlled trial for dog sterilization and how they had measured the appearance of new entire dogs, and they are now starting to explore what other sources may be at play. In Kabul, Dr. Mo saw his rabies control succeed through vaccination alone in the early years, but he also measured an increase in the dog population size, and now they use sterilization as well. Jessica described the data on parasite treatment that Amric had delivered and explored the unintentional harms that may be caused from widespread use. And I think this reveals an important realization about the use of data. It exposes not just successes, but also failures. And we must not hide from those. There is great opportunity for learning when we embrace both. And as a community, I see enormous progress in the adoption and use of scientific method, including exposing when things are not working as well as you would want them to. It's far better to know and to act than to ignore the truth. And that is one of the many reasons that I am proud to be part of this community. ICAM as an organisation and as a coalition feels honoured to be part of this community. We hope the resources that we shared with you this week will be useful. There were a lot of them, especially today. To mention just three, we have our new DPM courses, we have the SDG report and the Talea webinar. And please do share the link to the conference webpage. Let's make the absolute most of all the effort made by our presenters and share this opportunity to learn. I do want to extend a thank you to my ICAM members. As I said in my introduction 5 days ago, our strength and our enjoyment comes from working together. So thank you for being part of this coalition. And finally, I want to thank you for sticking with us for this week, for engaging wholeheartedly in the chat and the Q&A, and through those means, sharing your learning and knowledge with us. Thank you very much. We will be back with another conference, and we hope that we will see you all there. So this is only goodbye for now.